With Sinners getting added on Max, I thought it'd be a good time to point out some other fantastic supernatural flicks to watch on Max this weekend, also showing you how Sinners stacks up against them. This list features some indie gems, a couple of blockbusters, including another supernatural Michael B. Jordan movie, and a little-known urban fantasy flick written and directed by Ryan Gosling. Now, we're going for supernatural movies, not really sci-fi, but I do have a couple on this list, including my bottom pick, Another Earth. In this movie, what appears to be an exact replica of Earth suddenly appears in the sky. And this is not a big epic sci-fi movie, like this other Earth is not about to crash into ours. No one's calling up Bruce Willis to go blow it up or anything like that. No, this story is actually much more about the main character. But this is actually a pretty subtle indie movie that was actually written by Britt Marling, who also stars in this. She would go on to be in series like The OA on Netflix, which does have kind of a similar vibe. But Another Earth is about second chances, dealing with past traumas, things like that. There's actually a lot more going on in this movie than I'm describing, but I don't want to spoil any of the little interesting details. If you want an epic sci-fi movie, wait for my next pick on this list, but if you like finding little indie gems, Another Earth is a great one. Now, yes, my next pick is an epic sci-fi movie. It's also a movie I was incredibly excited for. It just came out in 2025, yet I was sorely disappointed with Mickey 17. Yet it still sliced its way onto this list because I loved enough things with Mickey 17 to give it a tepid recommendation at least. In fact, I absolutely loved Robert Pattinson's performance. I've come to love almost everything he does. And Mickey 17 is a cool opportunity for him. It lets him play some slightly different characters. I gotta say, I also love the core concept of Mickey 17. Pattinson's character plays an expendable, someone who is sent out into the frontier of space to die.
So good.
There really was an unknown virus in the air. Lethal one.
See you tomorrow.
To succumb to the elements and figure out what humans are capable of surviving. It's like literally the worst job in the universe. You also get an outstanding role from Toni Collette, but she's kind of great and everything. But honestly, with Mickey 17, the story just lost me completely the longer this movie went on. It doesn't make it a terrible movie, but it's not on the level of something like Snowpiercer or Parasite. I think two superior movies from the same director here. Mickey 17 is very ambitious, and again, has a lot of scenes I absolutely loved. Ultimately, it didn't really go anywhere I appreciated, though. And then my number 8 pick is almost the opposite of Mickey 17. It's low budget, stunning visuals, but it's a movie I had no expectations for and was pleasantly surprised by. Lost River. Now, this one fits onto this list because it is a little sexy and supernatural, but interestingly enough, it's also directed by Ryan Gosling. He's not in the movie. This is just sort of a passion project he did right after Drive and Only God Forgives, his films with Nicholas Winding Refn, and Lost River has a somewhat similar vibe. It takes place in a disappearing city. They filmed it in Detroit appropriately. But it's kind of an urban fantasy movie. Ben Mendelsohn is playing a bad guy in this one. He is particularly creepy in this one. You've also got Christina Hendricks and Eva Mendes, and like I said, stunning visuals. This is another one. If you really like discovering little indie gems, I highly recommend Lost River, but just like I said, you gotta go into this one with little to no expectations, other than it just being kind of a wildly unique movie. Again, directed by Ryan Gosling. Fair warning though, I think there's 2 scenes in this movie that are gonna make you squeamish at the very least. It's not a gross out movie, but it does have a couple of gross out moments in it.
Have you been dreaming about me?
Have I been dreaming about you?
Yeah.
One of the more interesting Nicolas Cage movies to come out in recent years is Dream Scenario. In this movie, he plays kind of an ordinary college professor, about as ordinary a man as you could imagine, actually, and then he suddenly starts showing up in the dreams of strangers. He's actually recognized in public, and it becomes a major national story. Very weird dreams, too, yet he's just sort of there. kind of the way he is in his real life. Just like Another Earth, Dream Scenario is about a lot more than just this little gimmick, and it is a great gimmick, by the way. The story has a lot to do with fast fame, which is something that happens a lot in our culture today. People become ridiculously famous or well-known for something kind of benign very quickly. And Dream Scenario successfully showcases the pitfalls of becoming famous quickly like that. And that gimmick is perfect for telling this particular story. Like, it works in the context of a movie really well. Both metaphorically and realistically, this movie just worked for me. I would say even if you've not really been into Nicolas Cage movies lately, this one may still be a standout for you, particularly, again, if you like finding little indie gems. This is another one.
Guess I'll see you in my dreams.
Yeah. Of course not.
But my number 6 pick is actually a Tim Burton flick that, had a lot of marketing, it did well, but it has been long forgotten quickly, I might add. Miss Peregrine's School for Peculiar Children. Now, part of the reason this was maybe forgotten quickly is it presents itself as a family-friendly movie, something kind of like Labyrinth or The Never-Ending Story, Harry Potter even, and it's darker considerably, or at least it's as dark as some of the darker Harry Potter flicks. That may seem obvious being a Tim Burton movie, but it really is more frightening than some of his other family-friendly movies like Alice in Wonderland and Willy Wonka, and I loved it for that. There's some pretty wild-looking creatures in this movie. I would say if you typically like Tim Burton, this is one of the better movies he's done in the last 20 years. I've not been a big fan of most of what he's been doing this century. I loved what he was doing in the 80s and 90s, though. While this is not a return to that in any kind of way, it does stand out as one of his better efforts. This one and Big Fish. I loved Big Fish, just watched it with my family. That one's over on Hulu. I actually did feature it in my email. If you'd like me to email you movie recommendations, you can just do that right here or go to darrenvandam.com. It's free. I send one out every single Friday, and I give you 5 movie recommendations that I typically don't recommend here on YouTube. Speaking of kids' movies, though, director Spike Jonze only did one. He's most famous for movies like Being John Malkovich, Adaptation. By the way, if you like Adaptation with Nicolas Cage, definitely watch Dream Scenario. And more recently, Her with Joaquin Phoenix, but before that, he actually directed Where the Wild Things Are, a movie obviously based on the famous children's book, and while it does touch on a lot of things in that book, you'll recall that's a very, very short story. The Spike Jonze version goes into much more detail and ends up, again, being this very heartfelt indie flick. You've also got one of the last performances from James Gandolfini. Yes, it's mostly voice acting. I mean, puppeteers are operating the body. It's not like he's in this monster. And I feel like the story is actually pretty ambitious. Like, if you were to watch this with your children, they would probably be entertained, mostly from the visual presentation and the fact that the main character is a young boy, but as an adult, I think you're going to identify with the feelings of this young boy a lot more than your kids will. All right, I mentioned Sinners up at the top of the list. You've probably been wondering where it's going to come in on this list. It's ranked higher than my next pick, but my next pick is an interesting fantasy sci-fi flick with a lot of supernatural elements and Michael B. Jordan in Chronicle. This released in 2012, well before Michael B. Jordan would be a household name. And it's about 3 high school friends that find this hole out in the middle of the woods. They go into it and they come out different. Now, Chronicle is a very interesting depiction of what people might do with superpowers.
Give me a countdown.
I will, I promise.
And even though there's a lot of movies out there that do something similar, Chronicle goes into completely different directions. Now, at first, these boys have quite a lot of fun with their new powers, and then one of them starts behaving strangely. Now, Chronicle ultimately ends up kind of going to a dark place, but it does not have a hard edge. It's pretty accessible. It's got a PG-13 rating. But again, very clever delivery, and Max currently has 2 versions. They have the original version and the director's cut, which only adds about 6 minutes to a 90-minute movie, so it's well worth checking out that director's cut. Now, my number 3 pick goes perfectly with Sinners, which I have not mentioned yet. It's a vampire movie from director Guillermo del Toro, but Unfortunately, I did feature it on my last Max list, which was a couple of months ago. Cronos is still one of my favorite Guillermo del Toro movies. This one is mixed language, Spanish and English, but this one's about a little Cronos device that can actually turn someone into a vampire. And Cronos is somewhat similar to Chronicle in that it's a well-worn genre, yet it goes into just wildly different directions than a vampire movie tends to go. Yes, it's artsy, it's even a little bit fartsy, but I love this flick. It's just a killer Guillermo del Toro horror movie with a lot of style, a lot of substance, and interesting little details in the way all the lore and fantasy works. It stands out to me in the world of vampire movies. I like that genre, but there's a lot of slop in it, and Cronos is top-notch stuff. So is Sinners, my number 2 pick on this list. If you're watching this video early, you gotta wait a few hours. Sinners is getting added to Max on July 4th. But I've seen it a couple of times already. The hype is real with this movie. It so seldom is with movies. It's real with Sinners. I mean, it's a long movie that never drags. It's a vampire movie where the vampires don't even really show up until you get halfway through the movie, and it still does not drag. Everything leading up to all of the horror elements is thoroughly interesting. Now, I gotta admit, I am partial to this movie. I'm from the South. I'm originally from Mississippi. I live in Atlanta now. I love movies set in the South. They're so seldomly done well. Sinners is done right, which is why I was so engaged to the first hour of this movie. But I'll say, even though the core concept here feels a lot like the Robert Rodriguez movie From Dusk Till Dawn, it changes things up enough to make it stand out and feel really original. It's one I'll be watching again. It's one I'll definitely be watching around Halloween time. I loved all the characters in this movie, almost all of them I really did love, and it's a sexy movie too. Like, yeah, there's sex scenes in it, that's not really anything new. I gotta say, some of the dialogue, some of the subtle dialogue in this movie was pretty spicy, like more so than you typically see in movies released today. I was surprised by that as well. So if you haven't seen it yet, lock in. It's an awesome vampire flick. I cannot recommend enough. But as far as paranormal, sci-fi movies that really stand out on Max go, there is nothing that competes with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is written by Charlie Kaufman, who interestingly enough did write Adaptation with Nicolas Cage and Being John Malkovich. I think this is his best movie, and it was directed by Michel Gondry, a very famous music video director. This is easily his best movie. I would even go out on a limb and say it's maybe Jim Carrey's best movie. Not saying it's the best Jim Carrey movie, but maybe the best movie Jim Carrey has a starring role in, if that makes any kind of sense. If you're not familiar with this movie, it revolves around a couple who are essentially falling out of love, and they both independently go to this new service that can erase your memories. They want each other erased from their memories. What's so brilliant about this movie, aside from the writing's incredible, but the way they filmed it is done almost 100% with practical in-camera effects, making Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind the most dream-like movie possibly in existence. It also happens to be a lot of fun, and so is Death of a Unicorn. I might as well mention that on this list. It's not on Max yet. It's coming on July 25th, but I did recently rent it. Now, this is a fun movie. If you go into this one expecting to be scared in any kind of way, that's your fault. While I did really like this movie, I felt like the beginning portion was a lot better than the end. But if you like the movie Krampus, this has a lot in common with it, except you're dealing with unicorns here. It's a silly, fun gimmick. You got Paul Rudd, and honestly, a pretty stellar cast for a flick like this. Just, pay attention to the title. Look at the trailer here. It's a lot of fun, not much else. But here's a quick recap of the list. I hope you found something good to watch. If you did, consider leaving me a like. It does help the channel out, and subscribing is a great way to make sure you might see my content again. To fill out that quiz and get paired up with a coach, but I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Max episode, and you will see me on the next one.